So courage is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to step in and do what is right when it's called for, to answer the questions of the four-way test. Yes, yes, yes. From the position that you hold. And like I said, I'm a simple guy. I like things that have an example for me. I like to be able to see an example, a tangible example of someone who has demonstrated leadership. And I look at history, I read an awful lot, and I found 3 or 4 really good examples. By the way, I'm going to take my watch off. I don't know what time I began. Do you know what it means when a speaker takes his watch off and puts it down over here? It means absolutely nothing. So I'll be done shortly, I hope. Good examples of leadership in history, I think there's 3. 2 of them you're going to know very well. A third one you might not know at all. One is a man from this country. One is a man from South Africa. And another is a young lady from Pakistan. Nelson Mandela is a great example of leadership. He is considered the father of Africa. He became president of Africa, and in 1990 he won the Nobel Peace Prize. But before that he was considered a terrorist. And before that he spent 27 years in prison because he was standing against a philosophy called apartheid, in which people of color did not have the same opportunities as people of non-color. He stood against an oppressive system and quite frankly carried out some acts of violence for which he was imprisoned and became ultimately a political prisoner. Now we should do well to keep in mind that while Nelson Mandela was imprisoned, the founders of this nation were considered rebels. They were enemies of the crown. They were considered criminals, and had we not won, most of them would have hung. Ben Franklin understood that very well when he said at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, we must all hang together, and we shall surely all hang separately. Leadership requires courage. And Nelson Mandela manifested that, as did Ben Franklin and the signers of the Declaration of Independence. All those people together understood what leadership was. They risked everything: fame, fortune, position, physical safety. They risked it all. Another man you'll be quite familiar with, we just celebrated Martin Luther King's Day. Profound impact on this country. Most of you were born, well, you were all born in a completely different time. And while this nation is far from perfect, had it not been for Martin Luther King, it would be far more imperfect. He stood against oppression and mistreatment of people of color again, people who were disadvantaged and discriminated against, after rising from small and quaint beginnings as a spiritual leader only, but over time the character, the fiber of his character is what drew people to him and drew him to stand in the face of opposition, to put him in risk and his family at risk of physical violence and ultimately to lose his life. He stood against things that were institutionalized and wrong. And you'll have that chance. But when Martin Luther King started, when Nelson Mandela started, nobody knew anything about them. And nobody knew anything about Malala Yousafzai. If I'm saying her name correctly, I hope I've got it right. I am a country boy. Young lady from Pakistan last year, perhaps some of you have heard about her. She blogged about the right for women in Pakistan to learn, to go to school and to be educated, equally with men. She did it anonymously initially, and ultimately she did it publicly by the encouragement of her father. And for that, one day when she was headed out on a bus last year, members of the Taliban rushed on board the bus and shot her and tried to kill her. She was not killed. They tried to kill her. They threatened to continue to try to kill her for what she stands for. She was 14 years old. How old are you guys? 7. 14 years old, you're 16, 17, 18 years old. You can have a profound impact from your position, particularly in this age, in a media age. You know, I grew up in a time when we didn't have iPads and iPhones. We had something called the Columbia Record Club, Columbia House Record Club. They mailed you a record every month if you got on their list, right? Some of you have heard about that. We had the finest athletic shoe available when I played basketball was a Chuck Taylor Converse All-Star. Things are a little different now. And we didn't have Axe body spray. You look like a guy that might have some Axe body spray in your, no? We had this thing called Brute Splash-On Lotion. Look, my dad's over here going, yeah. I wore it every Friday night with the disco chain and whatever else I had to go. Lewis, you got yours still? Yeah. So, These are great examples of people who at very young ages and throughout their lives had a tremendous impact on what was going on. And you might be asking yourself, well, how can I do that? Where will I have that platform? How can I make a change in my world? And you can do that very simply by getting up every day and being the kind of person that answers the four-way test with a resounding yes. You can do it when you encounter people who are mistreating others in your schools, when there's bullying going on, when there's other types of things going on, the mistreatment of people for how they look, how they act, for what their intellect is, for how they play a particular sport. I couldn't dunk a basketball until I was 12 years old. No, I couldn't dunk a basketball until I was about 17. And I took a lot of ridicule for that, even though I was 6'4", because, all this grew awfully fast and I couldn't get to the rim the way other guys could. And I took a lot of grief for that. But I had a guy on my team that kept encouraging me over and over and over again until I was able to do what he could do with a basketball. Two-handed, over the head, a lot of different things. Can't do it anymore. But I got encouraged by a guy who, when other people would ridicule me for being that tall and unable to do it, he'd say, hey, you'll get there. It'll come. You have the opportunity when you find out that other students in your classroom have taken unfair advantage and perhaps cheated on a test or plagiarized a paper. I've read some studies here recently that said roughly 70% of college students cheat at some point during their college tenure. And roughly 25% of every paper submitted in colleges across the country today have some form of plagiarism in them. That's just wrong. That's gaining unfair advantage at the expense of other people. I've often wondered what would have happened to Lance Armstrong if someone had said, Lance, could you please, Lance Armstrong hasn't won 7 or 8 Tour de France's, right? He hasn't, because he's been stripped of those titles. He might have won 2 or 3 had he not engaged in the behaviors. Had someone said to him early enough, often enough, and loud enough, and strongly enough, don't do this. You're going to jeopardize your future, your family, your fame, your fortune. But he did it anyway. I've wondered about General David Petraeus, one of the most honored men in our country's history, for his military performance, for his being a soldier's soldier, who got involved in a situation, quite frankly, we're all human, we're frail, we have the possibility of going the wrong way. If someone had said to him, General Petraeus, this lady who's not your wife, she's smart, she's attractive, but beware, you're about to sacrifice everything you've stood for in your entire career. That will be an indelible mark on your career. Now, no one should be judged for the worst thing they ever do in their life, and the only one thing, and he won't be, because he's done so many marvelous things for this world and this country. And I believe that Lance Armstrong, given the opportunity, will redeem himself. He's certainly done an awful lot for cancer patients throughout this country. But you have an opportunity as students to do some great things, to challenge people for their behavior, their conduct, and for their moral fiber, if you will, to make a difference in their lives. It won't be easy. You will run the risk of ridicule. But it's been said that all that's required for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do nothing. Just sit by, watch, wait, and hope things get better. And I would challenge you not to be those kind of men and women. I would challenge you to be the kind of men and women who speak up and speak out, like Malala, like Nelson, like Martin Luther King. I would challenge you to be the kind of leaders who demonstrate the courage. The problem is, where do you reach in sometimes and find it? Where do you find the courage to act and to behave in certain ways? And you do it with the encouragement of your friends, your family, but you do it in preparation. You anticipate what might be coming. If we look at the studies of business ethics and great moral failings in this country, most people who report on those things say, I never expected that to happen. I never thought I'd find myself in a position of stealing money, of committing adultery, whatever the case might be, cheating on a test, but the pressure just got to me, or the opportunity happened, and I wasn't prepared. But if they had anticipated some of that and thought it through a little bit, then perhaps they would have been better prepared. Just talking about ethics in the business world improves the performance and behavior of people within the community. They lie less, they cheat less, and make no mistake about it, you're getting watched. The people around you are looking at you. And mom, dad, it's been said that values are not taught, they're caught, not taught. They're looking at you, and they're wondering. They're seeing you, whether you return that money, then you get a little extra change back. at the grocery